We are very pleased that you have taken the time today to listen to our presentation with the title Accelerating Change in Enterprises with LeanIX Business Transformation Management Module. So let's take a look at the agenda to get to today. So what awaits you in the next 45 minutes. We will present you on the one hand the benefits of OKRs, so of objectives and key results, as well as of the business transformation module and the methods used by EFS regarding enterprise architecture management. So on the one hand, we have methods, and on the other hand, we also have practical insights from a real life use case from EFS Consulting with us. And lastly, we are very happy to answer your questions. So please feel free to type in questions you have into the Q&A section right in Zoom. And yeah, we're very curious what you want to know from us. So firstly, we will start with a brief round of introductions, starting with EFS. EFS Consulting is a medium-sized independent consultancy from the wonderful Vienna. We are founded in 1992. We have around 200 employees, and we also have a second headquarters in Shanghai. Our projects are ranging the whole entire value chain, especially with focus on the automotive industry. So on the one hand, we do projects in the early phase, production and logistics, until controlling and sales and after sales. Moreover, digitalization is a very important topic also to us. So the connection between business and IT, and therefore also agility and enterprise architecture management, are topics of our daily work life. So very shortly to EFS, we will then come over to the people you see on screen. And while I'm talking, I will also start. So my name is Liana Simon. I'm from EFS Engagement Manager. And from my project focus lies mainly on program and IT project management. Especially in the context of production and logistics, and also in the software development from engineering IT. Therefore, I have a huge connection to agility and agile frameworks, but also to enterprise architecture management regarding business capabilities, recordings of processes and optimization of processes, and also OT landscapes. And besides EIM, I am very interested and I have experience in the topic of organizational development, new work, and virtual collaboration. And then I will hand over to my colleague, Robert.
Yeah, also welcome from my side. I'm also very pleased to briefly introduce myself to you. My name is Robert Slabinger. I'm also engagement manager at EFS Consulting, and I've spent most of my professional life as a consultant working on international projects for various OEMs in the automotive sector. There I was able to serve my customers and clients in a wide range of topics and challenges, but especially always in the context of digitalization and IT transformation projects. During my project work, I came across various topics such as IT project management, system rollout, system migrations, and also large group programs like product lifecycle management and the digital factory. Inevitably, I also came across at some point or stumbled upon enterprise architecture management as a concept. And consequently, after doing more research and going deeper into this matter, consequently, we found the tool LeanIX. And we're proud to say that EFS Consulting is the first Austrian certified partner of LeanIX. And we're very pleased to hold this webinar together with LeanIX today and with Nicole. Yeah, and we're looking forward to providing you with some insights into our project worlds. So Nicole.
Thanks, Robert. Hi, so I'm Nicole Pitt. I'm a sales engineer at LeanIX. I work primarily with our customer base in the UK and Ireland, but also in other parts of EMEA. My background is mostly in fintech, startups, technology, that kind of space. And I did fall into enterprise architecture when I learned about LeanIX when I moved to Germany a few years ago. And I actually started at LeanIX at the beginning of March 2020, so right at the start of the global pandemic. So I was the first remote onboarded employee, fully remotely onboarded employee. So that was really interesting. I'm excited today, especially for the live demo, to really show how we can model out transformation projects and initiatives in LeanIX and how we can use BTM to really accelerate that. So back over to you, Liliana. Okay. So basically, if someone asks, what is LeanIX? The easiest way to describe this is LeanIX is like Google Maps for IT. When you need to get from point A to point B, you have a map in Google Maps with streets, cities, traffic, important points to consider as you're trying to get to your destination. And you can look at different options as well. So LeanIX does the same thing, but for your IT landscape. So you can very easily see a map of where do I have different types of, on-prem applications, SaaS, public cloud hosted applications, microservices, and you can compare different paths to get to the target architecture that you're looking for down the line, and really sort of map out different scenarios on your path to get there and compare those things. So a little bit more about us as a company. We currently have over 500 customers globally. We are also considered by analysts like Gartner and Forrester as a leader, challenger, strong performer. So we're often mentioned in that space by leading analysts. We have the advantage of not being a very old company. So we were actually founded in 2012, meaning that LeanIX is built on cloud native SaaS technology. We use microservices architecture as well. So we don't really have that, that older architecture to actually modernize, because we're built on kind of cutting edge modern technology. We also have some of the largest enterprises in the world working with us. So InfoSec is a really important topic. We're actually SOC 2 certified as well as ISO 27001 certified. And for those of you in the UK, we also have the Cyber Essentials Plus certification, which is really important for the UK public sector. From a personal perspective, we're 360 plus employees, fast approaching 400, and LeanIX is a really great place to work. I'm at the headquarters in Bonn, Germany, but we have offices all over Europe, in Boston in the US and in India as well. Thank you. All right, over to you, Liliana.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nicole. So after everyone knows who sits virtually in front of the screens, we will go over to OKR as the first topic, and then we will have a look at EAM and also on the BTM module from LeanIX. So OKR stands for Objectives and Key Results. And we all know that constant change is the new normal. We see that on our everyday life, especially since Corona. So OKR is offering us the possibility to combine this volatility of today's world and also the need for digital transformation with planning and a clear structure on an operational as well as on a strategic level. So both worlds are brought together in this concept. So it is no wonder that a lot of large companies, as you can see on the right side, are using OKR in their everyday life. Other advantages of OKR as a concept is also the active involvement of the employees. So a strategy is not only put into a drawer and get some dust on it, but it's really filled up with life. And the employees can also contribute to the strategy on their daily basis. Moreover, OKR is also a leadership tool because it combines the possibility for top-down leadership, so offering some strategic prioritization, some strategic framework, but on the other hand, it also enables bottom-up involvement of all employees. So let's look at the next slide a little bit more closely on the OKRs. And there are two levels to the OKRs. On the one level, you can see the big mission, the big vision. They are very inspiring, they're very motivating, we all know them. And we break them down into a strategy. The strategy has a long-term focus, and in line with this long-term focus of the strategy, we can derive objectives. These objectives are qualitative, and they are with a long-term goal behind them. This level describes what needs to be achieved. And on the other level, we can have a look at how we can achieve it on an operational and so on an everyday base. There we have the key results. The key results are quantitative and they are measurable. And for these key results, we have some daily tasks to do to achieve these key results on the other hand. So teams and employees, they contribute with their daily life to the tasks. They are contributing to the key results. They are then contributing to the objectives and so on and so on. So you really have the opportunity for bottom-up integration and bottom-up involvement. So what then would be the process to implement OKRs in your everyday life? I think people who are familiar with agile development or collaboration models will surely see some links right away. So it's quite similar because you break down these vision and mission strategic goals into the OKRs in the planning. So the planning is a meeting which you do like every 3 months, because like 3 months could be a cadence. It can also be a different kind of time frame. And in this planning, you define together what kind of key results do we manage in the next 3 months. What is manageable for us as a team. And then you also put some quantitative measures to that. And then I'm going on with some weeklies. So this is like then every week, the team comes together and just checks, are we on the track? What are the challenges? What kind of improvements do we need? Do we really achieve the key results which we planned during the planning phase? And after the weekly, so when the cadence comes to an end, in the review, we present the results and also we celebrate what we have achieved together. And in the retrospective, lastly, we're looking back and looking at what do we have learned, what can we take on for the next planning, for the next iteration, the next cadence, and also what are the points we want to keep and don't want to miss in the next cadence as well. So these are the informations from OKR, so from a methodological kind of point. And now we want to transfer this to our real life example. So Robert and I, we had the possibility to have a transformation project with an automotive OEM. The automotive OEM had the aim to reduce IT costs. I think we all know that kind of goal. And they had different locations and different countries all over the world. They had different processes, different applications, and of course, they also had different IT costs. So the management board realized that there is some potential for improvement, and they have asked us with the question, how can the IT systems of the locations be harmonized even further in order to reduce these IT costs? So at that time, 2 ideas came to my mind. The first was, that could be something for OKRs, because we have one big goal. The goal is to harmonize the IT systems from these 3 factories. And we also had another goal, namely to save 30% of the IT budget. So we even had like a quantitative goal behind it. Now, of course, I know that we can't just shut down some IT systems and just switch off with a click on a button. So the essential base was for us to record processes, to really understand what the business is doing in these 3 factories, and then also to understand the business capabilities behind it, and lastly, to understand which application is supporting which business capability or which process. So with this base, with this deep understanding of the business, we also had the opportunity to really go into further details for the IT side, because in our understanding, it's always business and IT, and I cannot just look at the IT without looking at the business on the other side. So I had the objective, I had my, and I could also derive some key results. I had 3 key results. The first key result was then to consolidate 3 first-level support desks. I also had the second key result to harmonize the 3 redundant production management systems, and the third one was to examine the implementation of SAP S/4HANA as a system. So my objective was clear, my 3 key results were very clear. So the next thing then for me was the next thing for me then was, how can I do this? So how am I going to achieve these results? And I thought that enterprise architecture management is definitely the right kind of approach. But at the same time, I knew that PowerPoint and Excel as a tool were coming to an end for this scope. So I thought of LeanIX and I thought of Nicole. So maybe, Nicole, can you help me there with LeanIX?
Yes, Eliana, you've come to the right place. So we look at the next slide here in the deck. Yeah, perfect. So our business transformation management module is exactly developed for this purpose. So with the combination of the APM core module in LeanIX and the BTM module, you can very easily and efficiently model out the OKRs and the transformation initiative. So combining OKRs, BTM, and enterprise architecture management really closes the gap between strategy and execution. So the OKRs provide a really clear framework for transformation targets. And then BTM kind of feeds into that by allowing you to plan, implement, and really control the initiatives that are allowing you to achieve the objectives. And then as we go down towards more of the execution level, you can use BTM to model the impacts on your information systems architecture and other elements of your architecture. And then the EA management actually feeds back by providing transparency into low-level dependencies, potential limitations, risks, and really everything that you need to consider for your target architecture. So these 3 concepts work very well in harmony, and we're gonna look at that in the demo today as well and see how this looks in action. Before we do that, a little bit more on the next slide about BTM and LeanIX. So this is the LeanIX data model on the left here. You can see it's split into different architectural layers. What we really want to highlight here is, as a result of the BTM module, we added 2 strategy and transformation fact sheet types. So one being objective and the other one being transformation item. An objective documents the relation between your organizational goals and business capabilities. So how is it actually improving the capabilities that you have as an organization? Well, a transformation item is describing the task to actually achieve that objective. So what are the different pieces that allow you to achieve it? You can track the changes and impacts on the architecture using that transformation item fact sheet. And it's actually split down into 4 different levels in a hierarchical order. So you have plans, building blocks, epics, and projects. And we'll see examples of those today in the demo. So next slide. From a practical perspective, these are the steps that you need to use to leverage LeanIX BTM. So first, you would identify the business requirements by looking at your objectives and business capabilities. So what do you actually want to improve in terms of those capabilities with the objectives that you've laid out? Then you want to plan different paths and scenarios to actually implement those objectives. So you can create different roadmaps for each of these scenarios. For example, we have cloud transformation 1 and 2 as potential scenarios here. And we can actually compare those roadmaps, compare the impacts, the conflicts and risks of each scenario, and decide what's the right approach for us as a business. So you can visualize all of these acts and conflicts and risk things in LeanIX out of the box or customized reports. And you can use the different timelines and views to actually support the decision-making process. Ultimately, when you've made a decision, you want to execute that scenario, the kind of preferred scenario for the business. When you do that in LeanIX, your EA documentation is updated automatically, and the whole process can be very easily tracked in detail. So there's no gap there between the strategy that you have and the documentation that you have at the end. So your active architecture is very clear, and it's updated automatically in LeanIX.
Yeah. So we know now that LeanIX is perfectly fitting to OKRs. LeanIX with the BTM module is also fitting to enterprise architecture management. So the next step then for me would be, so I know that I have to analyze, harmonize, and optimize the IT systems in my company. And I also want to use LeanIX BTM module as a tool for that, to capturing the goals and also to analyze and evaluate the data. But I'm unsure to approach this whole project. So I ask for support for a consultancy firm. So Robert, can you help me there?
Yeah, sure we can. Thanks very much, Liliana. So now we know the defined OKR goals, and also know that with LeanIX, we have the perfect tool in which we can map our OKRs into the fact sheets. I would say that nothing stands now in the way of starting this project. So in the next few minutes, let's take a look at how we plan and methodically manage such a project. The following phases do not follow any specific framework, but are derived from best practices of numerous projects of this kind. So in phase one, creating visibility, and this is about collecting and preparing all the relevant database to create transparency in the enterprise architecture. Remember the fact sheet types from LeanIX? It's now our target in this phase to create them, to fill them, and to bring them to life. Phase two, based on the data we now know, we can use dashboards and reports and the relations manager to identify improvement potentials in the architecture. And in phase three, we then derive our concrete fields of action from these potentials, prepare the transformation roadmap, and start our transformation projects. And LeanIX is with us every step of the way. Let's look at this phase again in detail. Before a project starts, the project scope must be defined. Based on the defined goals, we decide with the client which countries, locations, plants, factories, departments, and employers are relevant for the transformation or are affected by it. This is also where the classic or agile project approach with the usual PMO tools such as time management, budget tracking, status reporting begins. But today we won't go into detail there. In our specific example, the customer is a German OEM, and the IT departments to be harmonized are production plants in China and India. The departments we're looking at more closely are in production and are affected and the affected production systems there. After defining the scope, we start collecting and recording the data. We fill out all the fact sheet types from the individual enterprise architecture layers as comprehensively as possible. On the business side, this means processes or even better capabilities and users. From the information system layer, we look at the applications, the interfaces, and the data or information objects. And finally, from technology architecture, we check the IT components, software, hardware, or services. Finally, we shape the overall architecture according to the defined scope. We point out the dependencies between and within and begin with a qualitative assessment of the IT landscape, always in the context of the business, in the context to the business. And in this actual project I'm referring to, we collected approximately 150 applications at 3 different locations and with over 500 processes within 2 weeks. So after recording the current landscape, a thorough analysis of the inventory follows. Where are the cost drivers? Where are the bottlenecks in our landscape? Where are the silos? What are the pain points of the business? What and where are the white spots from an application perspective? The next step is the initial identification of these potentials. Are the pain points rather process issue? If this is the case, we start there. Are there gaps in the process/IT architecture? If this is the case, then maybe introducing a tool should be considered. Or other redundancies in the applications. If this is the case, then we should take a close look and think about migrating, replacing, or shutting them down. In addition to the analysis in the tool, it is always very useful to listen carefully to the application owners and department experts, process owners during these workshops and interviews. They usually know their own pain very well, and in best case confirm, even on an emotional level, what the data-driven analysis in LeanIX shows. In the worst case, it's the clean and factual figures and findings from the tool that must convince the affected stakeholders that there are improvement potentials. The final phase before the actual transformation starts with the derivation of the fields of action based on the identified potentials. Which sub-project should now be prioritized and implemented based on the defined goals from OKR to meet them, and the LeanIX analysis, application rationalization, or new process flows as examples. These project initiatives are then condensed into a transformation roadmap and transferred to the BTM module as a final step. This means that the further implementation can now be tracked there. Nicole will show us this in a moment in the demo. But for the sake of completeness, it must also be mentioned at this point that the ongoing transparent communication of results and interim results to the management, as well as the involvement of the relevant and affected stakeholders from the very beginning, are essential to the success of every transformation. But yeah, I think that's enough with the theory for now. Nicole, how do we track these new identified transformations in the BTM module of LeanIX?
Yeah, great, thanks, Robert. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll just switch screens, Robert, and then we'll get into the live demo, which will be the most fun part. I should mention as well that this is going to be quite a rapid fire kind of overview of the BTM module. So if you do have questions, just pop them into the Q&A function, and then we will definitely address them afterwards, because I'm sure things will come up. This is going to be a very fast moving demo. So right now we're in LeanIX. This is the landing page or the dashboard when you enter the LeanIX EA suite. Dashboards in LeanIX are very flexible and quite stakeholder specific. So when I come in, I want sort of that mission control where I see everything that is important to me as a stakeholder, regardless of where I sit in the organization. So in this scenario, Lizzie's actually built a number of dashboards, our stakeholder at the automotive OEM, and we're going to look at some of the ways that she's visualized the objectives and key results, as well as other parts of the EAM. So if we go down here a little bit, we can see the strategic business objectives and key results by owner. We can see that strategy is the top level here, objective is the second level, and then key results are the third level. So this is the objective that Lizzie owns around harmonizing the manufacturing IT landscape in 3 locations. So we're really going to hone in on this objective today and the key results under it. The heat map you see here shows which C-level executive owns each of these strategic objectives or key results, so we can see where the responsibility falls in the organization. So I guess the next logical question is, where does this information come from? Where can I find all this information that we see on these, LeanIX dashboards here? So we'll take a look quickly in the inventory. So the LeanIX inventory is really where you can find all of your information, so architectural elements. We call them fact sheets in LeanIX, and you might recognize this data model on the left from one of the previous slides. So we can look at everything we have in terms of our architecture, and then we filter down to only what we want to see. So for example, let's say that you want to look at all of your applications that are active today, so their life cycle is active and maybe has a perfect functional fit, for example. We can do quite a lot with this information. So we can jump into an out-of-the-box LeanIX report, which is going to suggest to you on the right-hand side here. You can export this information in an Excel format. We could also import similar information here very easily. We can also kind of edit this on the fly. So if we want to edit different information like, business criticality or functional fit, something like that, we can always just select different points here to edit. So going back a little bit into the objective perspective, let's say we want to look at all of our objectives that we have. So we have the level 1, 2, 3. We've also used LeanIX tagging here to differentiate between the strategy, the objectives, and the key results. So it's very easy to kind of differentiate these things in LeanIX. Going back to the dashboard that we started with here, we can see all of these objectives visualized. So what we can see here is our kind of landscape of objectives, and we can also see the transformation items, which you might remember from earlier. So the plans and projects that actually help us to achieve those objectives. We can see that for Lizzie's objective here, She's actually selected scenario 2, and it's in implementation right now. We've rejected scenario 1. And what I want to do now is show you how she got to that decision and what she used in LeanIX, what kind of views and indicators and criteria she used with her management team to choose scenario 2 over scenario 1. So let's go, let's just look at the impact on the business. So the objective that we're looking at today around harmonization, it's going to impact 2 business capabilities that we have. So information technology and manufacturing. We can see that we have fairly low current maturity for each of these capabilities, but they're also, in terms of the pace layering, they're considered innovation capabilities here. So let's actually look at a fact sheet itself. We'll go into the harmonization of manufacturing IT landscape objective here. And this is going to be quite similar on each fact sheet. What this aims to do is give you a 360-degree view of what's going on with this objective and all of the dependencies across the organization. So first of all, we can see that Lizzie Smith here is listed as the key result responsible. What that means is everybody in the organization clearly sees who the responsible individual is, who they should talk to about relevant topics, this objective. And you can also very easily collaborate with that person as well. So I can tag her in here as well as other colleagues and have conversations all directly on that objective fact sheet. We can also see, very importantly, the life cycle. So it's currently active today. It was planned in 2020, and we aim to be finished on December 31st of this year, if all goes well. Also on every fact sheet, you're going to see this Relations Explorer. And dependency is really the key word here. So we want to understand what is the overall strategy which this objective is supporting, as well as what are the key results under this objective. So the sort of the tasks that sort of enable this objective. And then very importantly, we have the 2 scenarios which we're considering that would actually achieve this objective for us. And we want to compare scenario 1 and scenario 2 through various views that we're going to look at on the dashboard. So let's look at the as-is architecture, because this is really important to understand what the architecture looks like today as we're deciding between these 2 potential scenarios. And just to sort of elaborate a little bit more, one scenario is that we replace the existing applications we have by a SaaS solution. So that is option 1. Option 2 is we select one of our applications as a global standard app and roll it out globally. And there's pros and cons to each of those approaches, which we'll look at. So we can see here that there's actually 3 applications in the landscape called Custom Production Manager. Each of these 3 locations, China, Germany, and India, have their own implementations of this custom developed production manager. We can quickly see here that the functional fit, so shown by this heat map, is best in Germany. So it's actually a perfect functional fit. And we might want to then choose that application as the global standard app if we're going to roll that out globally. So one of the options we have is to migrate it to Azure and then roll it out to the other user groups, sort of harmonizing that application, that set of applications, which are currently quite redundant. So we can easily look at other criteria as well, things like criticality, functional fit, technical fit, and of course, things like cost. So TCO is also a very useful indicator. From that, Lizzie can make more decisions around these applications and the strategy for each one. So she was able to make decisions around which applications to invest further in, which ones to maybe eliminate, migrate, or tolerate. So if we go back to the harmonization sheet here, let's just take a look at scenario 2. So this is the first transformation item that we're going to look at today in depth. So we have this select global standard app and migrate to Azure. That is the overall plan. That's one of our 2 options we have here. We can see that it's currently in implementation. As we said, it was ultimately decided, but we can always see kind of when it's planned and when the goal to be finished is as well. Equally important, we can see the overall strategy that it's supporting. So the key results and the objectives as we kind of fan out here. We can always look at the kind of high level dependencies there. And then we can see kind of a level lower. So these are the building blocks that make up this plan. So if we look at this integration stream we have, we can see that this building block is then made up of 8 tasks or projects. So this is really where we break it down into really actionable tasks. For example, this lift and shift Germany application to Azure, that's something that we need to do in order to implement this plan that we have. So if we look at kind of a lower level project here, we can see all of the dependencies. So all of this is quite familiar by this point. The magic really happens here when we look at this tab called impacts. So this is really where the BTM module comes into play. What this allows you to do is basically say, as a result of this piece of work, we're going to be adding these new relations to cloud infrastructure here. So these different cloud components in Azure. We're going to be changing the technical fit to fully appropriate, since this is now a modernized solution. And we're going to be setting the tag to public cloud as well. We're also going to be retiring the India and China custom production managers, as this Germany app will be the global standard. We also want to deprecate any old on-prem infrastructure here. So we're going to be removing the IT components that were there before in the on-prem setup that we had. Finally, we're going to set the current maturity of both of these capabilities that we're impacting to level 4. So they're going to be increasing in maturity as a result of this project. So if we actually now want to look at comparing the different scenarios in depth, Lizzie built this dashboard to compare scenario 1 and 2. There's lots of different dimensions shown here. So we have things like the t-shirt estimate, which is really the investment size that we estimate for these different scenarios. We also have the total cost of ownership and the business value for each one. So we're kind of comparing the scenarios by different perspectives here. We can look at the overall cost as well. So scenario 2 is a little bit more expensive for the business than scenario 1. However, if we look at the business value, we can see that scenario 2 has significant business value versus scenario 1, which is large benefit, but not quite as much as scenario 2. So if we want to look at the actual impacts, this is, I think, a really important point to make here. We want to look at the application landscape changing as a result of each scenario side by side. So we can see here that if we go with scenario 1, we're going to add this SaaS application. We can see it's added there, and we're going to be removing the 3 custom production manager applications from our 3 locations. If we choose scenario 2, we're going to be continuing to operate this custom production manager application. It's going to be migrated to Azure, as we saw previously, and then we're going to be removing the custom applications from our China and India locations. So this is a really quick and easy way to actually look at 2 scenarios side by side and start to compare them in many different dimensions, such as business value, risk, etc. So there's lots of options there. So together with EFS, Lizzie then took these insights from LeanIX, put together a business case, and ultimately needed to decide with management which scenario to execute. So they did decide on executing scenario 2 after comparing these different criteria and visualizations. So scenario 2 was the decision that was made after careful consideration. Once they had selected scenario 2, they needed to build a transformation roadmap, which is also quite quick to do in LeanIX. So we can see here, scenario 2 has different building blocks, and we can look down a little bit here, go down to the most granular task level. We can see the different projects and dependencies. So all of these little lines here are the dependencies we have between the projects. And even one level lower, we can see the applications which are affected. So we can see that as a result of this project, we're going to be phasing out. So in yellow here, we can see the life cycle of these 2 applications phasing out. And our Germany custom production manager is going to continue to be active, as that is now the global standard application. We also can see here that as a result, our access management capability is now at 4 in terms of current maturity, which was initially our target. So we've reached our target on that, and we've improved it as such. Finally, here on this dashboard, we can look at how the global user groups are impacted. So we can look at which countries were impacted by this transformation initiative. We can look at how each of their individual app landscapes have changed and the functional fit has changed as a result. And we can look at different impacts that it's had on the overall architecture, depending on where we sit in the organization and what's most interesting to us. The final view here, as Lizzie, I want to make sure that I'm able to easily track my OKRs. So I can come in here and see the different key results and objectives, really interact with these things, see at a high level what's going on with each OKR here, and then use different parts of LeanIX, like the diagrams here, to have custom views and anything that's kind of useful to me on a day-to-day basis. And finally, I can send something like this. So this survey, this OKR survey here, which looks something like this. You can send that on a monthly or weekly basis, depending on what makes sense, to make sure that it's very easy for me to submit a little survey like this and contribute on the updated results. So it's very easy for Lizzie and other stakeholders to without having to even navigate to LeanIX itself. Right, that was my rapid fire demo for you today. As I said, if any questions have come up as a result, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and I'll hand it back to EFS.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Nicole, for this insightful demo. Yeah, so basically we have arrived at the end of our project and thus of our webinar. In the end, we could deliver the successful business transformation for our clients, combining effective tools and methods such as OKR and LeanIX. Yeah, so we say thank you for listening. I hope this was interesting for you, and yeah, now we're happy to answer questions. I don't know, Liliana.
Yeah, so
You followed the Q&A.
We only have 3 minutes left, but much more questions. So I have now the honor to prioritize at least one. But yeah, nevertheless, we will definitely come back to you and send you also the answers to the other questions via email and with a follow-up. And also, if you have a more in-depth question to the short demo from Nicole, please be happy to share them. So I will just take the last one. And our business transformation, what was previously satisfied by one application technical component may now be satisfied by two. How would this relationship be mapped? Nicole, can you answer the question to the mapping of the relationship?
Yes, I'm just rereading the question. What was previously satisfied by one application?
So if you
may
first
now...
have like one application technical component and then it will be two, how can this relationship be mapped?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, that's a perfect use case for using these impacts. So you would just say, you know, application A or version 1 of application A, and then if it's going to be satisfied by two, you would just split that out into different impacts. So maybe you would, in terms of version 1 of that application, you would retire that one, so it would be phased out or end of life, and then you would have, as an impact of that transformation project, you would have however many, it might be 2 or more applications or technical components as the new versions being phased in, which would then be automatically shown once you press that execute button on the project in LeanIX. Yeah.
Perfectly. Thanks for answering that, Nicole. So unfortunately, the 45 minutes are over. We are very happy that you have listened to our webinar, and we hope you can put some insights for your daily life from that. And as I said, we will follow up with an email to answer all the other questions, and please feel free to contact us if you have any remarks or feedback. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.